Thank you so much for coming to the voiceofjobs.com podcast and listening, downloading, however you're doing, or maybe you're streaming it on the web from the voiceofjobseekers.com. Just want to thank you very much for listening. Hey, if you want to join in on the conversation, often I get emails and tweets that correspond with the particular episode that's put out that week, or sometimes even going back. I'll take any tweet from you if you're on Twitter. At Mark A. Dyson is my address there. In the meantime, thevoiceofjobs.com, you can go and leave a message when you press the send voicemail button on your right hand, and it'll activate your Mac or Windows laptop microphone, and you can leave a message right there. Or you can call me and leave a message at 708-365-9822, or you can text me there as well. You can also email me at mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Just want to give a shout out to a few folks. First of all, want to thank Mac Pritchard for leaving me a great review on iTunes. I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much, sir. And also, I want to give another shout out to Mark Miller, my friend, who we had a great talk this week. Looking forward to presenting his book here in the next couple of weeks. He's going to be releasing the week of April 15th, so look forward to that. He also wrote a great little blog post article about the podcast and how much he likes it, and he says it's the only job search podcast that he listens to. So really thankful for somebody like him to give me a shout out, as well as Hannah Morgan, who was on a couple of weeks ago, who also listens to the podcast regularly and also recommended as part of her lineup of websites that are resources, and I'll include a link to both of those in the show notes. And she's given a shout out again recently as well, in other ways. In fact, a couple of times in the past couple of months. So just want to give her a shout out. Also want to shout out the National Career Development Association, who featured my podcast as well as two others on their article in their spring edition of 2017. They release quarterly, and they featured this podcast as a career resource. So thank you to you guys, and especially to Jessica Ayub, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Just want to be sure to credit her for writing that article and featuring the podcast that she has. And I've listened to the two others that were there. One of them is Ryan Roten, who's been on the show, and I've been on his show. Definitely well-deserved, as much as mine, and also a great resource. And he told me that he started recording new episodes, so be sure you subscribe to his show, as well as subscribing to mine. In the meantime, I wanted to talk a little bit and spend a short time today as I start my short little vacation. I want to talk about what to do when your job search is code blue. And code blue, if you've never been to a hospital or ever worked in a hospital, code blue is when a patient is critical. They either can't breathe or the heart is stopped, or for the fact that they're bleeding out and they've lost all sense of their heart. Keep going. I'm not a practitioner in any kind of way. In fact, I failed chemistry is my running joke. But definitely there are times when your job search can go cold blue. And one of the things I just want to be sure to point out that this is an article that I wrote recently for Jobs to Careers, and I'll link to that in the show. The title of the article is actually What to Do When Your Job Search is Cold Blue. I'll probably name this a little bit differently. I don't know what name I'll give it yet, but what to do when your job search is is going dead when the heartbeat of your job search is stopped. And if there's a heartbeat, it would be getting leads and potential interviews. And really, the life of your job search and the ultimate of your job search, of course, is getting deep into the interviews and getting offers. But really, for a lot of people, for most people still, they use the job boards to apply. Now, there's more of you who've been listening to the show that found other ways to be creative in getting your job search going and getting it done. And it's great to hear those stories, how, that you've heard this job search podcast, and that you've gotten some success from it. So I want to be sure to offer this to you as a way to get your job search going. And again, going back to the code blue, most of the time, someone's heartbeat is stopped and they need to get started. So they'll go and they'll call a team of people. And there'll be respiratory therapists, there'll be nurses, there'll be doctors, there'll be medical students, there'll be other residences. Every now and then you'll see an attending or an ordering doctor. And all those people are there, are part of the team. And if anything, if they don't do anything else, they are giving their perspective from their specialty as to how to help the patient and their perspective in seeing what they're seeing. Maybe somebody will notice that that there's nothing really happening, that this patient is gone. Or that maybe there's a blood pressure and somebody sees that there might be some type of medication that can be given to help give that heart rate a boost, or maybe to help increase their blood pressure in some kind of way. And that's sort of what you need to have a team for yourself when hopefully before the heartbeat of your job search stops. But ultimately, you want that team to all give their perspectives. And it's not good to have a homogenous team because everybody's going to look at it the same way. But to be able to look at your job search from different sides, that you would be able to get a perspective for somebody who specializes and or even does what you want to do. That's ideal, because they can guide you in ways and give you insights to interview questions that may be asked, or things that you may need to do to bolster your potential, or classes that you need to take sometimes, or maybe they might be able to provide the name and position of people who can directly help you and maybe even refer you, and maybe even give a job lead. Sometimes they might be able to hire you themselves, but it's good to have those kind of people, as well as people who kind of know who to contact to get the right person. That's your secondhand connections many times, and those are very helpful people as well. Then there are people who just will encourage you, that will lift you up and inspire you to keep going, because sometimes the job search is a little long. And even when you find the right job and the potential job and you feel strongly that it's going to get you employed at that particular company, sometimes that process can run 60 days or even more. And if I talked about before, there are times I've had clients where they've had a phone interview and then they had to take an assessment before they even get the first in-person interview, because companies are screening that carefully. They're investing a lot of money, and so they are looking to make sure they get the best candidate possible. So you have to keep those things in line, but mostly you want a team. You want your spouse to be on that team. For some of you, you want your significant others on that team. But spouse is legally bound to be committed to the process. So they have even more incentive. And in fact, they have more insight to you, what your strengths and weaknesses are, than you do. They'll be a little bit more than anyone. But I've written on that before, where I said your spouse is probably your greatest assets in many ways than you would ever know. And you can probably count the ways yourself. But all of that is your team. And when you have a code blue, when there's nothing going on, you should say something that you ran out of leads, that you've applied to a bunch of places, you don't know where to go next. You need to say something. I mean, it's one thing to say that I'm looking for a job. Then, if you've done your research, you've had the networking conversations, you've had the conversations, you've been doing research online. Now that you need leads in those specific areas, you want to deploy your team. And again, that's where that they will help you. This is also a good time for you to pay really close attention to the things that are working that aren't working. I mean, hopefully you've been paying attention before to the parts of your job search where when it was clicking, these are the things that work. So you want to do those things. You don't want to do the things that didn't get you any results, or just to say that you're doing something to please anybody. You're not fooling anybody. You go with what works. That's really important. It's just like, again, the whole idea of a code blue. They're doing the things that work. They're doing the pumping. They're doing the breathing. They've deployed the defibrillator in many cases. They have the leads on the patient. They are watching the monitor. There's a lot of things going on that are very productive. They may be small in the role, but each of those roles are critical. They're listening to the patient breathing. They're listening for, is there any breathing that's as a response to all the things that are going on to help revive. There's medication given. There's someone taking notes about when certain medications are given at that particular time. They're keeping, and they've got to document it, and they've got to report it. In the same way, your team, whoever you have, it may not be a bunch of people. It may be just 2 or 3 people who can say, hey, you should try this. This worked last time, or try something a little different since what you tried last time. That's why it's important. It's important for your team to respond quickly. When you find out that you're not doing what you need to do, you need to have people who will be able to give you a call back within hours, not days. Now, I know sometimes that's not possible, but you need to have those kind of people. And if you don't have people on your team like that, you need to look for people like that. Because everybody has a role, and they understand that time is of the essence. Time is critical. In a code blue situation, they allow a threshold of about 20 minutes. Now, code may go a little bit longer, but they need to try at least 20 minutes of full effort. It's like a sprint to the goal line. It's not particularly the speed that they're looking for, but that everything that is possible to be done. You don't want to do less than that, because then it appears to everybody else that you're not doing your best. But in job search relation, you want to make sure that you have solid effort. And sometimes that mean you need to reset your goals and then make the sprint towards that. But ultimately, nobody should be more enthusiastic, more zealous, if I can use that word, towards making sure that things are clicking on all cylinders during your job search. No one should do it more than you. Not your mentors, not your spouse, not your friends, you. You're completely responsible to make sure your team is with you, that everybody's doing their role. And if people aren't able to do it, then you should have a plan B. who else I can reach out to, who else I can talk to, what else do I need to read, what can I do myself that will make a difference, and that should be always be your thought. But sometimes when you have other people's perspectives and that they're championing you, that's going to make all the difference in the world. So you need to be sure that you're paying attention to the time and that you're not wasting it, because people see that you're wasting time, they're not going to be urgent either. Now, sometimes they may need to be a family intervention in the sense. It's not a bad thing that your family knows that you need to get your job search leads up, but call family. Call family you haven't talked to extensively. It's hard to get that job offer. It's hard to get an interview. It is. The job search in total is hard. But sometimes when we even may need a little bit more motivation, our family could be pretty helpful. And I'll even say our friends could be even more helpful in keeping going. And for some of us, our friends are our families. So there's nothing wrong with using that. And I understand that there's a dynamic in some families where your friends are much more helpful for a job search than your family are. And I think that that's very valid. And I think you should use that when you need to. This is no time to dredge up, oh, my family won't help me. You know the MO of your family. You know their strength is encouragement and meeting some physical needs. That's pretty important. But you also need those family friends, or family, if you want to call them that they're ready to help motivate you, get you up and working. They're going the extra mile even for you. And you need to be sure to appreciate that in every step of the way. And I can't tell you how important that is. But that's part of the code blue. Now, many times families aren't necessarily in where the code blue is, but a lot of them will be praying. They'll be hoping, sending positive thoughts, doing whatever they can from a hopeful point of view that the person's revived and that they can continue to function and to be a part of their lives as much after the code blue, and not particularly performing the necessary resuscitation methods. But it is part of it, and it's just maybe not hands-on. Now, sometimes you'll need to be a little bit patient as well. Even though 20 minutes is a very short time in a code blue situation, there is a patience to make sure that the heart rate sustains a certain level. I mean, people are pumping the heart is going, and they can see on the monitor that the heart rate has gone up. Well, they've got to also watch to see if the heart's going to sustain a certain rate. I mean, it's likely that it's not going to sustain it at a high rate, but definitely at a rate where they feel comfortable enough to not to have to pump and use the defibrillator anymore. Those things are important because you'll need to watch for the results, and sometimes you'll need to wait for them too. Now, waiting doesn't mean that you do nothing and that you're putting your eggs all in one basket, but that you're continuing on and waiting for results of other things that are going on and knowing what to do with the next steps. And the employer can also help you with the next steps. If you're asking those questions, you're asking questions during the interview, what time should I allow before I call back to follow up if I don't hear anything? Those are kinds of questions you'll need to ask to be sure that things are moving forward. But just don't take stagnation as the patience that you need to have. You need to have the patience, but you also need to be aggressively looking towards the other possibilities as well. Because there are employers that still hire quicker than 30 days that are out there. But it's up to you to be able to manage all those different stagnations of time between employers. And again, if nothing's happening, then you need to be even that much more aggressive. But at the same time, you need to have the patience to be able to wait for the results and to be able to rationally pursue the next steps. So those things are important. Um, you should keep your family apprised, of course, of what's going on. Whenever there's a code blue, somebody's supposed to call the family. And if somebody's really changing and they've code blue more than once, then there's definitely an alter in the condition of the patient. So the family will need to be called, and that's what you'll need to do. You'll need to be ready to call the family in and let them know, okay, this is what's going on. And there's nothing wrong with keeping them apprised. There's some that will take it a little bit too far at times, but you can manage that sometimes by, you don't have to give them all the details. Just say that you continue to pursue. There's others you want to give the details. And you need to disperse that out. You need to manage each family member differently. But the best situation is when they're all very attentive. They want to do what's helpful, and they're completely supportive of you. That's really where the sweet spot is. So really, in again the code blue situation in a hospital, that they'll call the family and they'll apprise them of the situation, whether the patient is good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe sometimes they need to transfer out to somebody who's more of a specialist. Sort of what you may need to do. You may need to get somebody who's really knowledgeable about the whole process in their particular industry, or if it's something really new, then you'll need to go find someone, and you can use all the tools that we've talked about. Use LinkedIn, use Twitter, call people, find out who may be connected to certain people. Facebook is really great if you want to try to use that to help you get in contact with people, whatever it takes. But ultimately, you'll need to be responsible for the